Starting off at number 10 now, we have the beginning. When it comes to explaining to aliens everything about humans, the start is, well, a good place to start. This image shows conception, a sperm cell fusing with an egg cell, which will eventually divide and become a fetus and then a human just like you and me. Now, when I first saw this, I worried that the aliens might not really understand what scale we're talking on here. What if they think the sperm cell is the size of a truck and the egg cell is the size of a football stadium? They may think we're giants, but no. Luckily, scientists are a lot smarter than me. On the previous slide, they explained the sizes of egg and sperm cells to show the aliens that they are very, very, very small. Coming out number 9 now, we have the location. This image explains to any reasonably intelligent aliens where exactly our solar system is. We've also included a picture of our nearest neighbor, the Andromeda Galaxy. It's hoped that this information on the slide will be enough for the aliens to figure out where we are. Of course, this is all pretty cool, but some people are a bit worried. Many feel that we shouldn't be so open about broadcasting our location to advanced life in the universe. If human history is anything to go by, technologically advanced groups rarely visit others just to say hello. Do you think people are just being paranoid with this, or should we keep our voices down in this big bad universe of ours? Moving on to number 8 now, we have the Taj Mahal. This is one of the most iconic buildings ever created. Located in India, it was built as a mausoleum for the Mughal emperor in the 1600s. So, why exactly does NASA think the aliens should want to see it? Well, they actually included a number of iconic buildings such as the Great Wall of China and the Sydney Opera House. Perhaps they're trying to show that buildings are important to us. After all, they are quite a uniquely human thing. No other animals build buildings like we build buildings. We absolutely love it. They become important to us, especially if they are grand, old, or have some historic importance to them. Will the aliens understand this, or will they find our love of buildings a strange or even primitive quality?
Coming in at number 7, Men in Black. One of the most famous instances of alien invasion was the case of Dr. Albert Bender. Bender was a very intelligent researcher with an interest in aliens and UFOs, so much so that he wrote for a magazine called Space Review and even founded the International Flying Saucer Bureau. It started off very successfully. Bender began to gather lots of alleged evidence related to UFOs, but soon he began to see strange men watching him around his town, reportedly with glowing eyes. Bender wasn't too nervous about the strange phenomenon until one night in 1953 when 3 men in black showed up at his house. The mysterious men looked at first to be government agents, but he soon discovered they were something from a completely different realm. The men made it clear to Bender that he was to immediately stop all UFO research and investigation and to cease any publishing. They then confiscated most of his findings before threatening him once more and vanishing. Bender was so afraid of the experience that he immediately halted all publishings, quit ufology, and turned into a completely different man, terrified of the world and everything in it. Years later, he published a book about his experience with the Men in Black, and then went on to manage a motel and never touched extraterrestrial research ever again. Coming in at number 6, Whitley Strieber. On the night of December 26, 1985, Whitley Strieber was staying in his cabin when all of a sudden he was woken up by a strange noise. Then he saw this small, non-human entity approaching his bed, and next thing he knew, it was morning. Strieber was so confused he couldn't remember what the hell had happened to him exactly, but he knew it was something strange. According to Strieber, it was during a session of regressive hypnosis a few months later that some of the memories returned. According to Strieber, beings that he has since referred to as visitors entered his home and abducted him. But incredibly, that wasn't the only time. A few years later, while asleep in a hotel room, Strieber claimed to have been visited by another mysterious stranger. Quote, "I got up to open the door thinking it was the room service waiter. It was not. It was a man I described as about 5.5 feet tall, older looking, like someone in his 70s. He wore dark colored clothing, a turtleneck, and charcoal slacks." Strieber claimed the visitor stood motionless by the window for nearly an hour, and that the two shared a deep conversation about the dangers of creating an intelligence more evolved than its creator. Strieber said it was the most extraordinary conversation conversation he has ever had in his life.
Number 5. Antonio Villas-Boas. On October 16, 1957, at night, Antonio Villas-Boas was plowing fields when he saw what he described as a red star in the night sky that approached him, growing in size. The craft began descending to land in the field, and he decided to leave. Smart choice. He first attempted to leave the scene in his tractor, but the lights and engine died, so he decided to continue on foot. However, he was seized by a 5-foot-tall humanoid who was wearing gray coveralls and a helmet. Its eyes were small and blue, and instead of speech, it made noises like barks or yelps. 3 similar beings then joined, and they dragged him inside the craft. Once inside the craft, Antonio said that he was stripped of his clothes and covered from head to toe with a strange gel. He was then led into a large semicircular room through a doorway that had strange red symbols written all over it. They then took blood from him and took him to a third room where some kind of gas was pumped into the room, which made him violently ill. Shortly after this, Antonio was joined in the room by another humanoid. This one, however, was female, very attractive and naked, and the two had sexual intercourse. Antonio was then given back his clothing and taken a tour of the ship by the humanoids. He was then escorted off the ship and watched it as it took off, glowing brightly. When he returned home, he discovered that only 4 hours had passed.
Coming in at number 4, Audrey and Debbie Hewins. When twins Audrey and Debbie Hewins were young, the pair shared a bedroom, and they not only claimed that aliens exist, but that alien abductions do too, and they've experienced them. Audrey claims the alien visitations began when they were young, and that a bright blue light would come into the room. The door would open, and there would be a foggy mist of blue light shining through the whole house. Then, 2 figures would enter their room, and these 2 figures would come in. The sisters claim they were often together on the abductions, and while they have bits and pieces of memory they have worked hard to decipher, the aliens are very good at trying to wipe your brain clean of any recollection of the extraterrestrial events. Most terrifying though is that according to Audrey, not only were they routinely abducted well into adulthood, but that both her and her sister were used for experiments. Audrey says that while she was initially hesitant to come forward, after a non-human entity saved her from drowning in the ocean, she was inspired to dedicate her life to openly discussing her alien abduction experiences.
Elizabeth Clare. Elizabeth Clare was a South African woman who, starting in 1956, publicly claimed to have been contacted by aliens multiple times between 1954 and 1963. Her first visitation supposedly occurred when she was just 7 years old, and she was one of the first women to claim having a sexual relationship with an extraterrestrial. She promoted an idea of a better world and beliefs in a cosmic consciousness. In her book Beyond the Light Barrier, she strived to convey a message of peace, love, understanding, and environmentalism, which she credited to the superior wisdom of an advanced and immaculately utopian Venusian civilization. She also ended up promoting conspiracy theories of an international cover-up that kept vital information from the public and claimed to have been threatened with abduction to press her into revealing details about alien technology. And coming in at number 2, we have Travis Walton. On November 5th, 1975, Travis Walton was abducted by aliens and didn't return for 5 whole days. Travis's abduction began after working in Site-Greaves National Forest near Heber, Arizona. Travis and a 6-man group of loggers were returning home when they allegedly spotted a shiny disc spanning 40 feet in diameter hovering in the sky above them. He said it was a metallic glowing disc making some very strange sounds. The closer I got to it, the more scared we all got, and they were swearing at me to get away from there, and when I got close, it suddenly got louder and started to move. Travis then claimed that non-human beings abducted him and experimented on him until he fought them off. But as the beings purportedly poked and prodded him on a kind of table, 5 days elapsed on Earth where Walton was officially declared missing. I became conscious inside the craft, and I believed I was in the hospital, he said. I was in a lot of pain, and as I became more conscious, I looked around and I saw alien beings, and I just panicked. They were much smaller than me, and I think that's the reason they gave up. Once they found they couldn't control me, they split. Later research conducted that the site of Travis's abduction showed an unusual growth rate in the trees where the craft had allegedly hovered. The trees near the site were found to be producing wood fiber at a rate of 36 times greater than they had decades before.
And last up in our number 1 spot today, Terrell Copeland. A former US Marine, Copeland claimed that his first experience with aliens occurred in 2007 when he captured footage of what he believed to be a UFO on his cell phone from his apartment. Copeland says that he knew what he was witnessing was extraterrestrial in nature, but wasn't too concerned until he published the footage online. That's when things really became strange. Copeland details that the invasion happened when he was woken up by the sound of someone trying to enter his apartment. "Who is it?" he asked, but there was no answer. Still, he could see the knob was moving and something scratching on the other side of the door. He had the thought to grab his weapon, but as soon as he thought about it, he realized he was paralyzed and unable to move. That's when he heard a voice come from the other side of the door saying, "You don't need that weapon. We won't harm." Following that, Copeland began to experience missing hours, incapable of accounting for 4 waking hours during a span of 2 nights. So he began to keep a log of notes, and that is when the memories surfaced. Copeland claims, quote, "I was in a room and I saw a woman who did not have complete human features. She had the typical black eyes that you hear about. She had an elongated skull, and that startled me. And the next memory I have is me standing on my balcony waving at this cylinder-shaped ship."
Number 10. Astronaut sightings. Who better to trust about what's going on in space than people who have actually been to space before? That's right, numerous astronauts over the years have reported seeing things that they think might be UFOs. Buzz Aldrin was one of the astronauts aboard the Apollo 11, and during their journey they all reported seeing flying objects. Of course, space debris exists, and it could just be some metal junk that was adrift in space. But then why did they report that the objects appeared to be following them? When they thought that it might have just been a detached part of the rocket that was flying alongside them, they were informed that this piece was actually 6,000 miles away from them, and they definitely wouldn't have been able to see it from that far away. He also said that when they brought it up, they were briefed to not talk about what they had seen out in space. Well, the government can try all they want to cover things up, but eventually word always gets out. Number 9. Paintings. Now let's go well beyond spaceships and astronauts and move into the far more distant past, because alien sightings certainly aren't a new thing and seem to have been around for centuries. One piece of evidence that people often cite is a painting titled "The Madonna with Saint Giovannino." It was painted in the 15th century by Dominic Ghirlandaio and appears to depict a UFO flying around in the background, its shape matching up with people's frequent depictions of flying saucers as being alien spacecrafts. There also appear to be beams of light coming out from the bottom of the ship, and this has led people to believe that it is unmistakably an alien craft and not just something else placed up in the sky. And if you take a look at it, it does seem hard to believe that it could be anything else, as what other dark object would make sense to be floating in the sky like that? If you have any ideas, let me know what else you think it might be. Number 8. The Tic Tac UFO. Back in 2004 on the coast of California, a US Navy pilot named David Fravor reported seeing something strange. In fact, he reported seeing something that was, quote, "something not from this earth." They were about 60 to 100 miles off the coast of California, and he was leading a strike fighter squadron through some exercises when the incident occurred. He said that he saw a tic-tac shaped vessel flying through the air at incredible speeds, but it wasn't just him who saw it. It was also reported by another flight crew who actually followed after the craft and even filmed it. While the footage was originally kept classified, it's now been made available to the public. The case was then published by the New York Times after the Pentagon acknowledged its Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program, which is actually the Pentagon's own 21st century study of UFO sightings.
At number 7 now, we have the womb. This is quite an interesting one. It shows the outline of a male and female couple, and the female is pregnant. This is obviously an attempt to show the aliens how we reproduce. This might seem obvious to us, but you have to remember, extraterrestrial life may have a completely different way of reproducing. They might be horrified that humans grow in a womb for 9 months. Probably not horrified, but you get the idea. This slide is just one of many that attempt to show the aliens how we procreate, how we are born, and how we grow. Moving on to number 6 now, we have the animals. NASA included a number of pictures of animals on the disc. This is one of my favorites, showing wildebeest and zebras drinking alongside each other in Africa. Now you may think it's strange to include pictures of other animals when this is about us and aliens contacting each other. However, NASA felt that it wouldn't be a true representation limitation of Earth if they didn't include other animals too. After all, we may dominate this planet, but we're not the only ones who call it home. The pictures of animals show that we are not alone on this planet, and that perhaps we even speak on their behalf if it ever comes to a point of contact with an alien civilization. Next up at number 5 now, we have home. That's the name of this picture, taken by NASA in the 1970s. At the bottom, you can see they've included the diameter of Earth as 12,756 kilometers. This is the only full picture of Earth that was included. What will the aliens make of it? Some other slides explain what our atmosphere is made of. I'm sure they can figure out that the white bits are clouds and the blue bit is our ocean. Hopefully they know it's water. Do you think so too? Also, this brings me back to our previous point. I know some of you are a bit paranoid about alien invasions, thanks Hollywood. If so, do you think it's a good idea to include pictures of our planet and what exactly it's made of? Could that be used against us? I personally don't think we have to worry, but it's quite an interesting idea. Moving on to number 4 now, we have eating. Here is a man enjoying a bunch of grapes. It may look like nothing to you, but it might help aliens understand a lot about us. The universe is a big place. Aliens may be so different to us that we can't even imagine what they would be like. However, it's safe to assume that they, like us, need energy. To live is to consume energy in some form or another. Aliens might have their own unique way of getting their energy, but for us, it's food. This picture helps explain that humans and many other creatures on Earth consume food for energy so that we can survive. Hopefully they don't think we only eat grapes though. That would get pretty boring quite quickly. Next up, at number 3 now, we have tectonic. In this image, we can see 3 different Earths. The top and bottom might look unfamiliar to you. The top one is what Earth looked like when it was 1.5 billion years old. All of the continents were just kind of mushed together. Tectonic activity in the Earth's crust sent them apart from each other, drifting and crashing into each other until they resembled the middle picture. That's what Earth looks like for us today. And there's a little human hand there to show that this is the era of Earth we humans live in. The bottom one shows what Earth will look like in a further 10 million years. This is based on scientific predictions. Now you may think this is a bit redundant, but just wait. Voyager 1 could be traveling in space for millions of years. Maybe aliens won't find it for another 10 million years. Will humans even still be around then? Perhaps. Either way, our map of what the Earth will look like by then may be far more accurate than what it looks like now. Moving on to number 2 now, we have sport. This is a picture of sprinters in a race at the 1976 Olympics held in Montreal. So, why did NASA want aliens to see this one? Well, sport and competition have always been a huge part of the human story. It was competition that made us spread across the planet, and now it's sport that brings us together to compete in various events. It's a common bond that all human cultures seem to share in one way or another. This is also a contrast to the images of war and trouble that we often see on the news. This is NASA trying to show aliens that despite our differences, we are more similar than not. Call it the Olympic spirit or even the human spirit. It's a good picture to include that they can understand what exactly is going on. And finally now, at number 1, we have the cars. This picture was taken from a busy road in India. There are a few others like it that show humans with their cars. It seems like NASA wanted to show the aliens that we build things to do better jobs than we ever could. If they recognize that we constructed these cars, they may see in us a desire to reach beyond the physical limitations of our own human bodies. Perhaps this is something they will recognize in themselves too. Any aliens that find Voyager 1 will have to have plucked it from space. If that happens, there's a very good chance they will have had to use machinery just like our cars and space rockets. After all, we don't know of any living thing that can survive in space by itself forever. Perhaps they can though. Perhaps they see our obsession with machines as nothing more than filling a hole in the human condition.
Starting off this countdown, we have the mysterious UFO. Back in March of 1971, the US Navy set out looking for new places that they could drill for oil. While aboard the USS Trepang, they saw something weird flying in the sky. They managed to take photos of this flying aircraft. Turns out that this was some sort of flying UFO aircraft, and they didn't think that this photo would get leaked to the public, but it did. In fact, the pictures were labeled with official photograph not to be released and unauthorized disclosure subject. So they really didn't want the public getting their hands on these photos. But at last, we did. We still don't know where or when these first emerged online or who even leaked them. But it's a good thing that someone did, because this could be more proof that aliens and UFOs are indeed real. In our 9th spot, we have Area 51. It's
it's quite obvious that the military and government don't want us to know anything about Area 51 and what goes on inside of it. That's why no one is allowed to get anywhere remotely close to it. That includes the use of flying drones near it or flying aircrafts around it. But a pilot managed to make 3 different trips near Area 51 and take a number of close-up images of it. In the photos you can see the runway and the top secret base. The photos show new angles of the base that we haven't seen before. Isn't that crazy? Surely the military was not happy that these photos were taken and then leaked online. They're overly protective about that base. What do you think they're doing there? Secret biological warfare tests? Creating elaborate weapons? Or hiding aliens? Coming in at number 8, we have the outdated military vehicles. North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un is known to act all high and mighty. He wants his country to seem like the biggest power and military force in the world. But photos leaked from North Korea suggest otherwise. Some photos smuggled out of the country show that they are using outdated military vehicles. Like, look at this image! These vehicles are wood and gas generated. Countries haven't used vehicles like this since World War II. Meanwhile, Kim Jong-un is adamant that they have the biggest and best military equipment. This photo shows otherwise, which is one of the reasons why he has banned people from taking photos of his army.
Number 7. Wow! Exclamation point. The Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, otherwise known as SETI, is a group that, well, searches for extraterrestrial intelligence. In 1977, a large radio telescope outside of Ohio was scanning the skies on behalf of SETI when they picked up a signal that lasted for 72 seconds. The printouts of readings often included low numbers, which was typically just the background noise that the telescope picked up. But then a scientist noticed that there was a sudden string of letters as well as larger numbers. The letters went all the way up to U, which indicated a signal 30 times stronger than the typical background noise. Upon seeing these consecutive letters, which would represent a very strong signal and something potentially alien, he circled them and wrote the word wow followed by an exclamation point in bright red pen. To this day, we've never really seen anything else like it, and the extraordinary readout has yet to ever be duplicated. Number 6. Viking Mars. Now let's get into some more sciencey factual stuff. When people think of aliens, the term that might often come to mind is Martians, being attributed specifically to aliens that reside on the planet of Mars. NASA has sent a lot of things out there, and one expedition was referred to as Viking, them sending out little robots to take readings of the planet. One test that they performed was done on the soil, mixing soil with radioactive carbon-labeled nutrients to see if they would produce radioactive methane gas, this being a chemical sign of life on other planets. And it did, the test coming back with a positive result and finding organic molecules. But NASA just brushed it off, I guess, because they said that the other experiments didn't end up with the same results, so they just said it was a false positive. But one of the original scientists and others who have analyzed the data stand by their discovery, saying that the other experiments had just been ill-equipped for performing the tests and finding the same results. Number 5. Martian Fossil. Let's hear from NASA again, this event taking place in 1996 when they announced that they had found a Martian fossil. They said that they had found fossilized microbes within a lump of Martian rock, a meteorite that is theorized to have been blasted off the planet around 15 million years ago before finally winding up in Antarctica, where it was discovered 12 years prior in 1984. They analyzed it a lot, of course, and found organic molecules as well as small bits of the mineral known as magnetite, which can sometimes be found in Earth bacteria. Researchers also said that under an electron microscope they were able to see traces of nanobacteria. So it seems like evidence is continuing to stack up that other planets are, or used to be, capable of sustaining life. And with a universe as infinitely large as ours, it's hard to say that it's impossible that life on other planets could ever exist. Number 4. The Super Hornet. Let's now take a look at another piece of evidence that came out following the Pentagon's acknowledgement of their Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program. This took place back in 2015 on the East Coast and is another video of evidence discovered by the US Navy, this time by a FA-18 Super Hornet, a strike fighter that reaches speeds of up to 2,000 kilometers an hour. That's pretty fast. The pilots see the unidentified object moving at incredibly high speeds over the water and they struggle to keep up but are finally able to get a lock on it. When they do, they start cheering and one even says, "What the F is that thing?" They continue to follow it and seem to be unable to figure out what it possibly could be. This is another piece of evidence that had to go through a declassification process before it could be released to the public. Makes you wonder what other video footage and potential signs of alien life the government might be hiding from us in a filing cabinet labeled classified. Number 3. Chicago O'Hare. In November 2006 in Chicago, Illinois, airline staff and pilots alike were shocked by what they had witnessed. Multiple people reported seeing what they described as a flying saucer in the air. It was an overcast day and the UFO seemed to be just hovering over the Chicago O'Hare airport terminal. They then described how it seemed to shoot up into the air incredibly quickly, so fast that it punched a hole through the cloud cover above it. The FAA, or Federal Aviation Administration, described it as simply being a strange weather phenomenon and they wouldn't be investigating it, so don't worry about it. Of course, that's what they want us to think. But so many people at once reporting seeing a flying saucer shooting through the clouds doesn't really sound like a weather phenomenon to me. One flight traffic control official said, "To fly 7 million light years to O'Hare and then have to turn around and go home because your gate was occupied is simply unacceptable." Number 2. SETI readings. Now let's go back to the SETI project again. If you've somehow already forgotten by now, that refers to the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Back in 2003, they were using a large telescope in Puerto Rico to re-examine around 200 sections of the sky that had all previously shown unexplained radio signals. All of the signals had disappeared except for one, which had actually become stronger. It came from a spot between the constellations Pisces and Aries where there aren't any known stars or planets. The signal was emitting the frequency for hydrogen, the most common element which both absorbs and emits energy. Some astronomers believing that this is the most likely element aliens might use to send a message to us for this reason. The signal from this spot in space has now been recorded a total of 3 times, and has left many people wondering if it is truly a signal coming from aliens. Number 1. The Phoenix Lights. On March 13th in 1997, an event took place that was referred to as Lights over Phoenix, or the Phoenix Lights phenomenon. On this day, hundreds of witnesses reported seeing otherworldly lights across Arizona, Nevada, and northern Mexico. There were 2 main events. The first being a giant V-shaped aircraft that had 5 lights on it, maybe thrusters, though it apparently didn't make any sound. Then later that night, there were a series of red and orange lights in the sky that didn't appear to move at all. And while air traffic control employees could see the lights in the sky, they couldn't see them on their radars. The governor of the state of Arizona at the time said, "I'm a pilot and I know just about every machine that flies. It was bigger than anything I've ever seen. It remains a great mystery." And it really does remain a mystery. To this day, nobody seems to have any real or solid explanation for what the large spacecraft and the lights might have been. It was said that it was a military flare drop, but this came after their original statement that they had no planes in the air, and even a recreation of the event didn't line up with what people had seen, flares flickering and burning out after only a few seconds. I have an explanation though. It was aliens.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the New Jersey UFO. This UFO sighting took place in 2001 just above the New Jersey Turnpike. On July 14th, 2001, just after midnight, for around 15 minutes, motorists driving down the highway stopped to stare at the sky to witness what no one could believe. There were strange orange and yellow lights in a V formation just above the Arthur Kill waterway. There were a ton of witnesses who were all extremely confused and shocked as to what they were seeing. Air traffic controllers initially denied that there were any flying objects that could have caused the mysterious lights, but a group called the New York Strange Phenomena investigators claimed that they received radar data that night that could corroborate all of the stories that the witnesses were telling. It may not have been aliens, but it certainly was some sort of unidentified flying object that no one had ever seen before, and there were people from all walks of life witnessing it together. In our number 9 spot today, we have habitable planets. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying the video so far, because it really helps us out. So, we once were on a journey to start off by figuring out which planets were actually habitable. And by that I mean which planets were rocky and which were orbiting a star within what is called the Goldilocks zone and had water, and that they weren't too hot or too cold so that water could be in liquid form. It just seems like the absolute basics needed in order to sustain life. Well, now, after more years of research, it is thought that actually about 1 in every 5 or 6 planets is actually a planet that could potentially sustain life. It is thought that there is roughly about 1 exoplanet for every star in our galaxy. That's a lot of planets, which means that's a lot of planets that could potentially have life. There certainly are planets that researchers believe are the most likely, but that doesn't mean that they are the only ones that should be looked into. Basically, what I'm saying is that there are, at the very least, millions of planets that could be hosting some form of life, whether it's an intelligent civilization or just single-cell organisms that have the potential to evolve over millions of years, just like us. Any kind of life would be a huge and exciting win for the science community, so it's just a reminder to us to keep searching because we never know what we're going to find. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Stephenville UFO. In January of 2008, in the small town of Stephenville, Texas, a bunch of residents all saw something in the sky that they couldn't believe. In the beginning, it appeared to be white lights in the sky that were first in a single arc, but then they quickly moved to form 2 parallel lines. It was estimated that the lights were spanning about a mile long and half a mile wide, but the craziest part is that it was flying at 3,000 miles per hour, which is similar to the speed of a fighter jet, but there was no sound reported at all. The government chalked this sighting up to the US Air Force flight operation, but many of the residents who saw this event on that day were absolutely not convinced and truly felt like they were lied to. Some even explained that what they saw was too technologically advanced for human civilization. I want you guys to let me know in the comments if you believe the story that the government told or if you trust the instincts of the people in Stephenville who saw that incident that day.
In our 7th spot, we have the Russian Cadet School. For the longest time, rumors were going around about Russia having a military school for young folks. Turns out that it wasn't a rumor, but indeed true. Photos released from 2015 showed a number of young students being trained to be soldiers. The photos showed them holding and firing weapons, and not just like small BB guns, no, like full-on AK-47s and rocket launchers. On top of that, the school is run like a military. The students have a strict routine to follow and intense training. They learn everything from weapons training to weapons maintenance to self-defense and fighting to even parachuting. That's insane. It's said that 600 boys and girls participate in their training in the summer and 1,500 are there throughout the whole year. They're gonna be some bad fighters when they're older, that's for sure. Moving on to number 6, we have these sexy photos. Back in 2013, a number of female Israeli soldiers leaked intimate photos of themselves online. The photos showed the girls in just their underwear hiding their parts with weapons. Other images show them completely flashing their behind while at the military base. Obviously, the Israeli military was not happy about this because it makes their military seem like a joke and it's very unprofessional. They ordered for the photos of the soldiers to be taken down, but instead the girls were like F you and uploaded more scandalous photos. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Instagram leak. A couple of years ago, a number of female Marines had their Instagrams infiltrated and any scandalous photos of themselves were posted online to the Marines United Facebook page. So it would show an image of these women in uniform and then showed them what they look like in a bikini or tight tank top. Whatever photos the poster could find on their Instagrams. The US military obviously wants to be taken seriously and too many people were out there sexualizing their troops. Even the Marines felt violated and a number of them actually quit because of this incident. Coming in at number 4, we have Beijing's secret missile project. In 2018, a number of shots from Beijing revealed a bunch of secret hidden weapons. It was first spotted on TV during a broadcast, but the objects in the background had been censored out, so people were like, ooh, what are they hiding back there? Upon further analysis, people think that they were developing new missiles or a new rocket that's even more powerful than a ballistic missile, which is obviously why they had it censored out. They didn't want anyone else seeing what they had been working on. Meanwhile, people were still able to figure out what they were up to. But it also led others to believe that they're hiding even more weapons. What else do they got in the works? Who knows? In our 3rd spot, we have these sleeping soldiers. Here we have more leaked photos from North Korea.
Turns out that his army isn't as strong as he makes it out to be. A number of photos show his soldiers malnourished and ill because of the lack of food they are given and the rigorous training that they are subjected to. In fact, a number of photos show soldiers sleeping at the side of the roads. One soldier was taken to the hospital and it was discovered that his body was riddled with parasites. That's because of the poor conditions he had been living in. It's actually really sad. And of course, Kim Jong-un doesn't want anyone to know about this side of his soldiers. In our second spot, we have the innocent victims. Between 2010 to 2011, Rolling Stones magazine got their hands on 150 leaked photos from the US military. And so then what did they do with those photos? They published them. The photos were highly disgusting and controversial. The photos were taken of the US soldiers in Afghanistan. The photos show them posing alongside deceased individuals who they had killed. The soldiers are standing there posing with the bodies while smiling. To make matters worse, the people killed were completely innocent. In fact, one of the people who was killed approached the soldiers, surrendered himself to them, and showed he was unarmed, and they still shot and killed him. Later, they said that he was threatening to throw a bomb at them, which was a lie. Anyways, the photos are very graphic, and out of respect for the victims, I do not feel comfortable showing them. And in our number one spot today, we have the Abu Ghraib. During the early stages of the Iraq War, US Army officials and the CIA committed a series of unethical acts and human rights violations and war crimes. This was all against prisoners at the Abu Ghraib prison. They would torture them and get them to do many disturbing things. And then they took photos and videos of them doing such things. The soldiers in the photos and videos all have smiles on their faces, suggesting that they were enjoying torturing them. In total, there were 1,325 compromising photos and videos that got leaked in 2004. One of the worst parts of this all is that 70 to 90% of the prisoners were mistakenly detained. They were innocent.
Number 10. The Venus Wave. Spotted by the Akatsuki spacecraft in 2015, a massive wave was observed traveling across the surface of Venus. Stretching for 10,000 kilometers, the wave continued up until Venus's cloud tops, where it suddenly became stationary. It is good to note that the average traveling speed of clouds in Venus' upper atmosphere roughly caps out at about 100 meters per second. The source of the wave is undetermined, with theories being tossed around that it might have been caused by a rogue gravity wave, which itself would have been caused by the displacement of a fluid from its preferred position. As Venus is an extremely volatile planet, and no research craft has survived for longer than a couple of minutes on its surface, these claims are difficult to prove, and the secrets of this blue dot remain hidden beneath its swirling clouds. Number 9. Oumuamua. On October 19th, 2017, an object was sighted from the University of Hawaii. Classified as a comet, the object is thin and flat, or roughly a quarter of a mile long. But more importantly, it was picking up speed. If you don't remember middle school science, an object in motion remains in motion unless acted upon by an object of similar or equal mass. In space, because there is nothing to act upon the object to slow it down, any velocity will be kept until impact. But an increase in velocity doesn't make sense without propellant. So what was moving Oumuamua? Well, the theory goes that it might contain a chunk of solid hydrogen, which was slowly falling off of the object's surface and allowing for an increase in speed. However, studying the comet is completely impossible, as it's the first observed object to fly into our system and then fly back out. So this theory is just kind of unconfirmed, and we may never know where the traveler came from, nor where it did go. Number 8. PSO J318.5-22. Discovered yet again by our friends at the University of Hawaii, PSO J318.5-22 is a rogue planet, floating through space without a star for it to orbit. It's estimated to be roughly the size of Jupiter, but as to where it came from, no one has a clue. Theories about some hoping that it may have been kicked away from its home star due to a gravitational anomaly, but who can say? None but the rogue planet know.
In our number 7 spot today, we have time. This one is basically just the theory that we may not have found aliens yet because we haven't spent enough time looking for them. Realistically, it's been about half a century history since we really gained the technological advancements that have allowed us to really look for them. In terms of the universe, that is the smallest little blink of an eye. Things take time, and it's incredibly possible that we just haven't had enough of it yet. Every year, as more money gets put into things like that, it allows incredibly smart and brilliant people the opportunity to create things that unbelievably make space more and more accessible to us. The more accessible it is, the more we will be able to discover. So maybe this is just a lesson in patience for all of us. If aliens do exist, I'm sure we'll find them at some point. Hopefully sooner rather than later, because I personally would like to meet an alien, but since I'm not an astronaut, I might have to wait a little longer than I'd like to. In our number 6 spot today, we have this unexplained UFO. In 2017, after the existence of the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program became more well known, a video was released of an encounter between an FA-18 Super Hornet and some sort of unidentified flying object. There weren't a ton of details released about exactly what happened during this encounter, but using a Raytheon Advanced Targeting forward-looking infrared pod, they were able to capture an extremely fast-moving white oval that was around 45 feet long. The oval had no wings and didn't appear to have any kind of exhaust either. They were tracking the UFO at an altitude of 25,000 feet just above the Atlantic Ocean, and then they were shocked as the craft rotated on its axis and flew away. There was no explanation released with the footage because it truly is unbelievable and currently unexplainable. In our number 5 spot today, we have They May Already Be Here. Okay, this one is for my conspiracy theorists out there. This is just the theory that maybe we can't find aliens because they've already found us and are actually walking among us, and we just don't know. I'm not quite sure the logistics of this one because I am definitely a human, and no alien who's posing as a human has ever revealed themselves to me personally, but I can't speak for everyone. It's possible that if this is true, aliens might be waiting for the right time to let us know that they've been walking around with us, or there may already be some lucky people out there who already know. I know a lot of us would be quite frightened of aliens if we did find concrete proof of their existence, and it might be likely that they're afraid of us as well. And if they are more intelligent than us and were able to find us first, they might just be testing out the waters to see what humans really think of them before letting us in on their secrets. So if you meet a stranger who starts asking you a bunch of questions about aliens, you might want to think twice next time. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Chicago UFO. This UFO sighting comes from November 7th, 2006 and was at the O'Hare International Airport in Chicago. Flight 446 was getting ready to head to North Carolina when an employee from United Airlines that was on the tarmac noticed a dark gray metallic aircraft hovering over one of the gates. After this, 11 other employees and even a few people who didn't work there saw this gray saucer floating around 4:15 p.m. The people who saw it explained that it hovered above the gate for around 5 minutes before it just shot itself upwards and broke through the clouds, leaving a hole where you could see the blue sky. The strangest thing, however, is that this flying saucer did not show up on the radar, so the Federal Aviation Administration just called it a weather phenomena and would not investigate it, despite there being around 15 witnesses who all saw the same thing. This story, however, became the most read story on the Chicago Tribune's website and even went international because it certainly is very interesting. In our number 3 spot today, we have light shifts. In the later half of 2015, a Penn State astronomer named Jason Wright explained that there were pretty erratic and spontaneous shifts in the light that was coming from a newly discovered star. This star sits about 1,280 light years away from us on Earth, and these shifts were very similar to as if something was passing in front of our view of the star briefly before passing right through. Scientists weren't able to connect this to any exoplanets or anything like that, which we could understand, and this is what led Jason to quite an interesting theory. He stated that it is possible that the shifts are caused by massive objects passing in front of the star in a kind of orbit, like an array of massive satellites or a similar kind of structure, like the type of thing that would be produced by an intelligent and civilized life form. Again, like many things, it's just a theory, but a very compelling one at that. In our number 2 spot today, we have the USS Princeton UFO. This UFO sighting comes from 2004. On November 14th of that year, the USS Princeton noticed an unknown aircraft of some sort that was about 100 miles off of the coast of San Diego. For 2 weeks prior to this, the crew had been tracking a strange flying object, and this one would start out at around 80,000 feet before extremely quickly dropping to hover right above the Pacific Ocean. Black Aces Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate of Strike Fighter Squadron 41 went over in 2 fighter jets in in order to kind of scope out the situation. And when they arrived, they saw what at first appeared to be churning water while there was an oval shape just below the surface. After this, a white oval shaped object appeared above the water, but it had no markings on it. Like no windows, nothing that would indicate an engine, no wings, and the infrared monitors on the jets didn't pick up any sort of exhaust. The commander and lieutenant commander tried to intercept this strange aircraft, but it very quickly flew away and reappeared on the monitor 60 miles away. Like when I say quickly, I mean it was moving at 3 times the speed of sound and over twice the speed of fighter jets. So faster than any kind of technology we currently have. We still don't know exactly what this was, but I'm sure a lot of us are thinking the same thing. In our number 1 spot today, we have radio signals. Basically, we're getting radio signals from somewhere, but we just aren't quite sure what exactly is going on there. It started in 2007 when we began getting what are called fast radio bursts, and they are a totally mysterious phenomena to scientists. These bursts are only a few milliseconds long, but they emit more energy than the sun does in 24 hours, which is just a statement that my brain struggles to comprehend. All of this is already super cool and very interesting, but here's an even crazier thing about them. The main thing we know about these bursts is that they are coming from outside of the Milky Way. They're coming from outside of our own galaxy. Space is the coolest and most unbelievable thing. This obviously had led a lot of experts to believe that it could be coming from an advanced civilization that is quite far away, and they may be trying to contact us, but we just don't have the technology to interpret the signals. Maybe one day scientists will figure out a way to accept whatever message it is they're trying to send, or maybe one day we'll get a visit from them and they'll be mad at us for not answering their messages. Either way, it's all very cool and very interesting.
Starting us off in our number 10 spot is the backyard alien. In late April of this year, Las Vegas police officers investigated reports of 2 unknown entities falling from the sky. On the same night, a nearby resident called 911 to report something 100% not human on their property. A coincidence? The resident doesn't think so. According to authorities, a man called 911 to report 2 unknown entities in his backyard after he and his family saw a similar object fall from the sky. The man described the creature as 8 to 10 feet tall beings that appeared to be like aliens with big mouths, big shiny eyes, and added, once again, that they were 100% not human. They were looking right at him and his family from their backyard, and he kept clarifying that it was not a joke and that he was terrified of whatever was lurking in the dark. The department investigated the property for the days following the alleged paranormal incident before closing the case. But still, I can only imagine how terrified that man must have been. Let's just hope it doesn't return for more.
Number 9. Demi Lovato. Yes, that Demi Lovato, the singer, songwriter, and actress, has met aliens. Well, allegedly. Demi claims they were abducted by 3 space aliens and taken to a pink and purple planet. Demi appeared on the Kelly Clarkson show and said, "I woke up in my room and there were 3 beings. They asked, 'Do you want to see your planet?' I whooshed out of the room, I hovered before our planet, then whooshed to this pink and purple planet." Now, some people are skeptical that she made this up to promote the limited series streaming at Peacock, Unidentified with Demi Lovato, but if it is true, what an experience. Next up is Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker. The Pascagoula abduction was an UFO sighting and alien abduction in 1973, in which Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker claimed that they were abducted by aliens while fishing. On the evening of October 11th, 1973, 42-year-old Charles Hickson and 19-year-old Calvin Parker told the Jackson County, Mississippi Sheriff's Office that they were fishing off a pier on the west bank of the river when they heard a whirling/whizzing sound, saw 2 flashing blue lights, and observed an oval-shaped object 30 to 40 feet across and 8 to 10 feet high. They claimed they were conscious but paralyzed, while 3 creatures with robotic slit mouths and crab-like pincers took them aboard the object and subjected them to an examination.
Number 7. The Diamond Planet. Discovered in 2004, Janssen is an exoplanet close to the star Cancri A. Years later, the planet was determined to be a carbon planet, a theoretical type of planet with more carbon than oxygen. As a result of this, it is theorized, due to the method of which diamonds are created, that within Janssen could lie an absolute abundance of diamonds. However, getting to it would be difficult. See, Janssen's proximity to the sun is so small that average temperatures are estimated to be around 17,000 degrees Celsius. So good luck getting close enough to snag some stones. Honestly, the scariest thing to me is that someone might actually try this, for reasons that I doubt even the greatest minds could truly comprehend, beyond, I guess, greed. Number 6. The Vampire Star. Halloween's over, but the true horror fans know that it lasts all year long. Not just limited to our solar system, the existence of Hammer horror classic monsters has clearly reached the stars, specifically symbiotic stars. See, when two stars are formed in proximity to one another, their mass will draw in the hydrogen from the other star, which will deplete its life, turning it into a white dwarf. From there, the white dwarf will go supernova, annihilating both in the process. What scientists have difficulty explaining is how such celestial entities exist, and worst of all, how some have survived the supernova. It's hypothesized that Betelgeuse, the star, not the ghost, is what's called a cannibal star, and before we observed it, Betelgeuse must have sucked the life out of another star. So why can we still see Betelgeuse today, despite the fact that the other star would have gone novo? Wait, did I say it 3 times? Number 5. The huge LQG. Quasars are extremely supermassive black holes that are surrounded by accretion disks, which then release their generation of a beam as pure radiation. We'll get into that later. Cool. And slightly terrifying, right? Well, the huge LQG is made up of a cluster of 74 quasars. 74. Originally believed to be impossible, this massive cluster of black holes and radiation defies both science and sense just by its existence. The huge LQG has a rough span of 4 billion light years, easily the largest structure in the universe, and by far larger than our own. Number 4. The Boots Void. Do you know what's more terrifying than something? Nothing. And the Boots Void is just that. Nothing. A region of space where there is simply nothing. And to be clear, this isn't Barnard 68, the dark nebula that eats light. No. This is just nothing. Several galaxies do surround it, but none exist within its center. There's nothing within the void. There may never have been, and there maybe never will be. Or maybe there's just something keeping everything else out. Number 3. The incoming megacomet. Did you know that every year 17,000 meteorites fall to Earth? Now, most of these just burn up in the atmosphere, usually long before they're visible. The ones that can be seen are the ones that are actually dubbed meteors. But what if a meteor couldn't burn up in the atmosphere? Spotted by the Hubble telescope, the comet Bernard-Donnelly-Bernstein is currently flying right towards us at around 72,000 miles per hour. 60 miles across, the meteor is roughly half the theorized size of the asteroid responsible for ending the age of the dinosaurs. But nevertheless, this cosmic catastrophe could cause considerable consternation were it to collide with our rock. So, when does it get here? Well, don't bother looking up because it isn't gonna come within like 1 billion miles of us. Even so, if it changes course, even slightly, we could be looking at a pretty dark future. Number 2. Gamma ray bursts. There's a distinct beauty to black holes, their swirling light collapsing into a mass so dense as to erase light itself. Their byproducts are gamma ray bursts, these streams of light that fire out of what would be visualized as the top and bottom of the black hole. It sort of looks like a gyroscope, only one that, defies physics and erases matter. Well, as it turns out, even the most beautiful parts of this flower can be its deadliest, as gamma ray bursts are explosions of high-intensity radiation that could cook anything in its way in a matter of seconds. So it's a good thing that, stars aren't dying out regularly, and even better that our planet has never been hit by a gamma ray burst before. Oh wait, it actually totally was. Well, the effects wouldn't exactly be, Death Star adjacent. If close enough, the radiation would absolutely be lethal, and close in terms of spatial proximity could be anywhere, honestly. Comforting thought. Number 1. The CMB cold spot. The CMB cold spot was discovered by the Wilkinson Microwave anisotropy probe, a device primarily constructed to measure cosmic background radiation and test the theory of the Big Bang. The cold spot was added to a structure that is titled, I'm not joking, the Axis of Evil, a name given to any anomaly that deviates from the Copernican principle. Far larger than the Boots void, temperatures within the cold spot are around 0.00007 Kelvin. The average in space, of course, is about 2.7 Kelvin. What caused the creation of the cold spot is unknown, but physicist Laura Mersini Houghton claimed that it could be an imprint from a parallel universe.